I'm from Cleveland, Ohio originally. I've been here in California since I graduated law school in 1977. Went to Oberlin College undergrad and Cape Western Reserve Law School. And I'm a member of the Ohio bar and the California bar. And practiced law for 44 years. And I played sports from the time I could walk. Baseball, basketball, football. And so as an aspiring professional, I was always trying to figure out how I could stay engaged in sports, even though I never really had any desire to play. I mean, I was realistic about my talent. I was a Division III player, so I wasn't trying to go pro in sports, but I knew I could go pro in something. And then I figured out I could do something actually related to sports by representing pro athletes. So after about 8 years, I practiced first in Ohio, and then I moved to California and worked at one of the largest law firms in the world at that time, Heller Ehrman. And I had always planned since I was a youngster, I wanted to be involved. But then after about 8 years of practicing, I was ready, I thought, to help somebody. And so I reached out to Clark Kellogg. I identified him. He was a kid coming out of Ohio at the time. And I'd done my due diligence on the whole industry, and I knew that I would be competing with the likes of David Falk at ProServe and the guys at IMG.
Right.
But what I had learned early on in life is that relationships really matter. And so I was able to network to get an introduction to Clark and his family. And after talking to them, I was able to demonstrate that even though I hadn't negotiated an NFL or NBA contract, I had negotiated contracts far more complex. The NBA contract is just a printed form. And the NFL contract and the Major League Baseball contract, the same way, it's just a printed form where you fill in the blank of how much money the guys will get. But the union and management, that is the league, they've already negotiated all the other terms,
right,
conditions of employment, just like unions do in the steel mill or at the post office, right? So your health care and your medical and your grievance procedure and all that kind of stuff has already been agreed to by the team and the players or the union. So you're really just negotiating contract amount, not even terms so much. Well, that was then. Now you don't even negotiate length of the contract or nothing.
Right. It's all slotted, right?
Well, it's all a function of where you drafted. So if you drafted top 10, you do 4 years. If you're a free agent, 3 years, and all this kind of stuff. So there's, Stevie Wonder could do this stuff now. But I identified Clark and I sit down with him and his family, and I shared with him my background representing, companies like Levi Strauss and Wells Fargo Bank. And I think I bought a deal that I had just done that maybe $1 or $2 billion, and you put together what you call a transcript after we complete a deal, so that if you ever have to refer back, we have all the paperwork associated with that deal in a single volume, like a telephone book. Maybe this time it's actually twice the size of a telephone book, right? So I bought that with me to the meeting with Clark, and then I bought the NBA contract, which is 4 pages. And I threw them both on the table, right? And you can even hear the NBA contract when it hits, because it's just 4 pages.
Right.
Then I put this transcript, this big thud, boom. That's Clark. If you don't think I can fill in this blank right here, after negotiating every word,
this right
here, they tell me you're a smart guy, right? and he got it, and I represented him, and it went on to represent Anthony Hancock, who was also from Cleveland, the #1. He was the first receiver picked in '83, and Gil Bird and Willie Charles.
Chargers, yeah.
a whole gang of guys. And I did it not so much for money or notoriety. I mean, those things flowed with it, but I did it really because I saw these kids as assets of our community
Mm-hmm.
that, if managed properly, could create an impact beyond just their immediate family and whoever else might share in what happened.
And
Oh, okay.
it,
Whoever else might share in their success. And so even if you fast forward to the day and you look at these players who are taking a stand on social justice, our guys were taking stands years ago
right,
and trying to make a difference and an impact in their communities years ago. And I'm not talking about, like a weekend camp or, dropping into school and telling the kids don't do drugs and stay in school, but actually hiring black professionals. So Clark Kellogg had a black accountant and a black investment
right,
person.
right.
He bought his house to a black broker and that sort of stuff. So we were doing that kind of stuff then, and then while a few guys are doing that today, with the amount of time that's passed since I did it, you would think they all would have realized that they could work with people that look like them and still achieve
Right.
success. And that's still, I mean, that's part of the whole myth of white superiority and black inferiority that prevails today. So while the players of the day are standing up and talking about racial injustice, they discriminate against black people.
Right,
The players
right.
discriminate against black professionals, right? And so it's an interesting kind of a situation that's going on.
Well, for the people that are listening that don't know Clark Kellogg's story, they only see him pop up for March Madness once a year. Understanding what a phenomenal talent Clark was before he had the knee problems coming out of Cleveland and coming out of Ohio State, but also, again, as you say, the intelligence that the man has and the things that he's done. I recommend people look at what Clark has done. And as you said, you were in on the ground floor of that, making him aware of the things that he could accomplish for not just himself, for other people as he progressed through his professional career and after that.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I learned actually after representing him sometimes later that they actually referred to him as the next Magic and the first
Right.
LeBron.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh, yeah.
he was the first LeBron, and he was the next Magic. And he was, I mean, he just finished a 9-year tenure on the Board of Trustees at Ohio State. He's just an amazing, he's kind of guy you want your daughter to marry, you wish you had as a son, and all this. He's just a great, humble young man who has used his platform to help other people. And not, you have to go on television to do it. He just does it behind the scenes, quietly.
Right.
And so, yeah, I mean, that's, in fact, I'm writing an article right now for the University of Pittsburgh Law Journal about, again, it's good that these guys are taking a stand and they're talking up and they should. But my question is, in fact, I heard Chris Webber the other day talking about his experience coming up in Detroit and how he met Charles Barkley, came by his school, and then he said something along the lines of, you can't be something that you can't see. And so by seeing and meeting Charles as
Right.
a kid, somehow that's the reason he's a pro. And I corrected my son. I said, no, he's a pro because a group of black men in Detroit saw potential in him. And they put their arms around him and they protected him from the negative influences and they
Right.
kept him on the straight and narrow. That's why he's a pro, not because he met Charles Barkley for 15 minutes when
Right.
he was in the 11th grade or whatever. And so my question to Weber is, why isn't he doing for other people what people did for him?
Live for him. Right. Exactly. And well, it's like you said, it's easy to think of that simple statement of, well, I met so-and-so and such as he was going through town and he waved from the bus and now I wanted to be like him.
Yeah.
And it's like, Did you reach out? What have you done for your community? What have you done for people? What have you done for yourself to
Yeah.
give you that example? Yeah.
Well, and I'm not saying, I don't know what Chris Webber has done. I mean, he might have done
Right.
some stuff, but as he was describing that situation, I know that's the more common scenario is, because first of all, they try to disconnect them from their community by telling them that the people that they were raised with, everybody wants to get in their pocket, everybody wants something from them, so you got to cut them off. And you go over here. It's almost like, I mean, I'm not a politician, and I abhor politics, but it's like Donald Trump. He's telling people, he's complaining about what Democrats are doing, but he's really telling people that's what he's doing. The Democrats are not doing it.
Right.
He's accusing Democrats of doing the very same thing he's doing.
Same thing's doing. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Well,
so that's was crazy.
Well, I think in the Chris Webber situation, and I don't know it as well, but if you take the Jalen Rose model and say, I started a school, I started this, I've done that, and he's not beating his chest about it, but he's went back in the community quietly and done the things that it seems like you're saying that Chris Webber, if he's making that disconnect, hasn't done.
Well, and they all, and see, I think another misconception is they just, I think people think just the star players like the LeBron and those kind of guys can make a difference. But in my opinion, you can be the last guy on the roster because you're still a pro and you still have the pro athlete platform to leverage that and bring people together. So you don't have to try to do all of this stuff. You can't do it yourself, first of all. And so, I mean, as an example, and I represented Willie Gault when he came out of the University of Tennessee. And the first thing I did was call my college roommate, Carl Winfrey, who was born and raised in Chicago. And I wanted to know who we needed to meet in Chicago, what black people we needed to meet.
Right.
And so he identified this guy named Dempsey Travis, who was the biggest real estate developer in Chicago. And who, as it turned out, his three best friends were Harold Washington, who was then the mayor, Max Robinson, who was the first black guy on Network News, and John Johnson, the owner of Ebony. So
right.
when Willie went to Chicago, before he even signed his contract, we had a meeting with the three black leaders in Chicago. So that, again, it's no surprise that after he signed his contract, after he, made the transition to the Chicago Bears, he identified Harper High School as the worst performing high school in Chicago. I mean, they may as well not even open it every day because nobody was coming.
Right.
And he took Oprah Winfrey, who was then a disc jockey on the radio in Chicago. He took Consolidated Foods, Sarah Lee, and took all these resources because they came to Willie to want to do business with Willie. And Willie said, okay, well, you can do business with me, but you got to first help me over here.
Help
this
them.
Is what I want to do. I want to help this school. So he took all those same people over to Harper High, and they wrote a big article about just the transition or the transformation that happened in that school. Because again, it wasn't just a drive-by. He went there every Tuesday, every off day. He was at Harper High for the whole season, for the whole year. And he was bringing stuff with him every time he came.
Right.
And again, if they had continued to do that from the early 80s to 2020, I think we would be in a whole different situation.
Right.
And I mean, we asking the Democrats and the Republicans to fix what's wrong in our house, and we need to change what we're doing. If we want them to change, we can just wait on them to change, but we can change in the meantime. And if everybody who could would share their time and their talent and their resources, because we all, I mean, if you're under 65 and black, you probably came from the hood.
Right.
I come from the hood, right? And so I'm not scared to go back to the hood because that's where I came from. And I know that the only reason, I've had the kind of success I've had in my life is that people invested in me.
Right.
And so it would be beyond hypocritical for me to make it and then just, sit on the beach in Hawaii and drink my ties and, and say I made it and, you go get yours.
You go get right.
Yeah. No.
Well, it's interesting. You made a correlation to a story to a gentleman that I connected with a few months ago, Eric Davis, who was one of the captains on the Houston Cougars Phi Slamma Jamma team. Now, he's not the name you think of. You're thinking of Drexler and Olajuwon and all those guys,
Yeah.
but he was a part of that team. He's from Chicago, went to Texas to play, comes back to Chicago, becomes a police officer.
Yeah.
And a lot of other things happened. It was a great interview, about an hour and a half. I only plan on doing 15 minutes. It was a great guy. But just like he said, he went back as a police officer, and his beat was Cabrini Green.
Yeah.
And started a project called The Base, which is, long story short, it's an athletic-based project, but if there are if the people involved do not perform academically, they cannot be involved. And that's a short story of it, but it gives you an idea. And he was a police officer for 27 years, I believe. And that was his beat. And he took that back to where he came from, right?
Exactly. And the fact he played on the national championship team gave him some cash that he could then leverage. Right. And again, it's not you have to be, the top player on the team or the most popular. You just have to really have a heart and compassion for other people. Realize we all in this together. We all bleed red blood, and stuff. But no, it's exciting. So we actually have a program that since I retired, like basically we call it SPON, which initially stood for the Business of Success Beyond Sport, and it's a year-round, multi-year program for kids who play sports. And we started middle school, and we've been doing it for 5 years now. So we just graduated our first class. In fact, one of our seniors, Clark Phillips, was one of the top cornerbacks in the country. He was recruited by Ohio State, Alabama, Notre Dame, Oregon, SC, every place. He wound up going to Utah, but he initially committed to Ohio State.
Okay.
And that was on my advice. Only, I'm from Cleveland. I'm a Buckhead. I know Ohio State. And I know they're going to take care of him, that sort of thing. But now, what we have been with this kid he's been in our program for 3 years, right? And so part of what we teach them is how to make decisions, right? They call it decision science in suburban schools. Because we don't have these kind of programs in our school.
Right.
To teach you how to make a decision. Okay, and part of that process is determining if you're listening to, if somebody's trying to give you some advice, what evidence do you have that you should be listening to them? You follow? Not that they're bad people or whatever, but if you're listening to your friend trying to tell you to do something and he's never done it or experienced it, how can he be giving you advice, right? So there's a whole process, and that's one of the things that we've been involved in with these kids in terms of teaching how to make a decision. So even while I recommended Ohio State, we don't tell them what to do. I just recommended Ohio State from amongst the teams or the schools he was considering, right? Considering Tennessee and Alabama. I said, you don't want to go south, man. Tennessee, Alabama, Ohio State, Notre Dame. Now, Notre Dame, that might be good, but there ain't a whole lot of black people on Notre Dame's campus that don't play sports, right? And so you want to have the social kind of interaction as well as just football. And so he went down to Ohio State. He had a great time on his trip, and he was ready to commit. And then, he came back to me and said, Coach, I'm not scared of competition, but they got 8 5-stars already there who are freshmen, sophomores, and juniors.
Right.
So if I go, I know I can ball, but are they even gonna give me a chance?
Right. Exactly.
And so he wound up ultimately going to Utah, where he's their highest rated recruit in their history. So he made a boss kind of decision about his future because he's going to walk on as a freshman and probably start.
Right.
And so so his goal is he's going to get his degree in 3 years because he graduated a year early in high school. So he'll graduate in 3 years and go pro, barring an injury or anything like that. But he's more than a student athlete right now.
Right.
And that's what we're raising up kids who know how to leverage the lessons that they learn in sports, starting off with the understanding that most successful people look back with fondness to their participation in sport as a major contributor to their success. You look at, Obama hooped, right? And so the sports is good, but you got to do more than sport. And because the numbers tell you that, 6% of guys who play high school sports are going to get a Division I scholarship, and 1% of them will ever get paid. And so while we're not trying to discourage you, if those are the odds, it's harder to do that than become a rocket scientist.
Right. Right. But I think the thing, and this was true for me, is that it's not that because I had I had aspirations of playing the NBA, but there's no way it was going to happen. I understand that, but it's the getting involved in something a little bit different than just going to class, sitting there, going home. Getting involved in what you do and other people do, being a teammate, being a better citizen, being all those good fun things, and then progressing along with that, it gives you more options. And as you said, the ability and the platform to make better decisions because you're seeing more, you're involved in more aspects, and you get to make other comparisons. Whereas if you're just, going and sitting in class and being bored or whatever, it's kind of tough to keep moving along with that. Now, and as you said, there are options available in the sporting world that aren't necessarily on the playing field. You can become a member of the front office. You can be a scout. You can work this. You can work all kinds of other things. The sports world's bigger than just being on the playing field, and you get to learn those things by being involved. So I always encourage people to get involved in some kind of sport, especially a team sport, and learn more about yourself, and then you can make better decisions on who you want to be as you move forward.
Well, in addition to that, the lessons that you learn and the experiences that you have. So for example, there's a concept in personal development called set of the sail, right? It says that when something happens to you, it's not about what happened, what are you going to do about it, right?
Right.
Okay, so in sports, you learn, so you lose tonight, so you got a few minutes to wallow in your sorrow, but you got to get ready for tomorrow. Right? So what happened? Okay, that was yesterday. What you gonna do about today's game?
Right.
And so those skills and those philosophies and those teaching moments in sport are directly transferable to your success in business and in life and in your career.
Right. Well, you notice it with the example of the cornerback. You just got beat for a touchdown. And are you going to continue to play the game? Right. Or are you just going to go, I got beat, I quit. Exactly. There's another play right after that. They kick off, you guys get the ball, you turn it back over, you're back on defense again, you got to play. You can't, you have to learn from that without remembering that it happened.
That's right. And so if you've had those kinds of experiences as an athlete, so then when I introduce you to this concept called set of the sail, where stuff happens and the question is not why or who or whatever, the question what you're going to do about it, an athlete can understand that because he know if he gets beat on one play, he still got to make the next play.
Right.
And so again, if they can internalize these concepts and these philosophies that great people use, if we've already done it, if you analyze, Jim Collins, who wrote the book Good to Great, and Robert Kawasaki and all these kind of guys, these principles, they're universal. It makes no difference if you're black, white, green, red, they apply.
Exactly.
If you master them, you're going to get the same result from it. And so as a result, we get these kids who are 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th graders, and they're outperforming their peers and everything. The metrics that the district tracks, in a system where 75% of the boys of color don't even qualify to go to college
Right.
when they graduate high school. And so we got a group of kids who play sports who are outperforming on all the metrics that they track, headed to college. And we just won. We put together a team of hackers, right? And we entered into. You familiar with MIT, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, the finest, engineering technical school probably in our country, and they have a global hackathon every year. So we put the Bad News Boys together, and and we won that, a global hackathon, and we won, and we was in the adult category. And then they put us in the adult category. We didn't even know we was in the adult category, but they put it in there because when I registered our team, they asked you for your age, and so I put my age, but I'm 68.
Right.
So they put our boys, now the adult category is anybody over 18. So these are mostly college kids, who are really, they got lots of time and lots of experience hacking and coding and that sort of thing. We won that thing. We had one kid who just graduated high school. He's going to Long Beach State to do computer science. We had 11th grader, 3 10th graders, 4 9th graders, an 8th grader, and a 6th grader. And we
6th grader, okay.
That's right. We beat guys. Yeah, because the program starts in middle school. So we got guys we got a 7th grader who's been with us for 4 years. He started in the 4th grade. He's already reading college level, doing college level math. And he's the best athlete in the city in the 8th grade.
And see, one of the things that,
basketball.
Yeah, one of the things I think that we shortchange these kids on, and some of them have legitimate learning disabilities and whatnot, but we say, if you're an athlete, we'll take care of the rest for you. And the thing that I always found, I'm a former athletic director as well, is that, wait a second, what is the minimum requirement allowed to play a sport? They said, well, it should be higher than everybody else because it's an extracurricular. Now, I don't mean that you have to have a 3.5, but our GPA was a 2.0. I'm like, you can get a 2.0 falling out of bed.
Exactly.
You have to
exactly. Yeah.
You have to put more effort into it to get the reward of playing the sport, and then what comes from that. At least that was my opinion. I got shot down, but that's what I thought. As opposed to
we wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying. In fact, I just had a conversation with one of our kids. He's a 9th grader, and he had missed a couple of sessions, right? So I was calling to check on him, not check on him, but to check him for not handling his business, right? And so I said, well, where do you want to go to school, Kai? And he said he wanted to go to UCLA. And I said, okay. Now, do you know what the profile is of a freshman at UCLA? And he said, no. I said, well, Google it. You got your phone right there.
You're smart enough to find out, right?
So he Googled it, and while he's Googling it, I'm on my phone doing the same thing, and I get there before him. And I said, okay, so the profile of an incoming freshman at UCLA is a 4.3 grade point average. Okay, that means they do better than A. Okay, they're taking honors, everything.
Right.
And what's your average, man? So he said 2.8. I said, okay, see, now you talk about playing basketball at UCLA, you have a 2.8 now, and the profile is 4.3. So you have some work to do. I'm not trying to discourage you, but at least you got a target that you can shoot for. So he thought he could get into UCLA just based on basketball time. I said, well, first of all, you're 5'6". Okay, and so you might grow. I mean, who knows? But
it's happened, right?
Right now, you're 5'6", and you got a plan based on that. And so you need to make sure that academically you qualify, as opposed to just trying to do it on the basis of athletics. But we don't do that enough with our kids. We tell them what they should and shouldn't do, but we don't show them how to do it or how not to do it. I mean, because they tell, grown-ups, because don't do drugs, but we do drugs, right? Because you got to be shown how do you avoid that temptation when your friends pull it out, and you in the car and you riding with them and somebody pulls out drugs. What do? You can't get out, right? And so you gotta, we need to reinforce them and build them up. I like to say, what I heard a quick sermon by T.D. Jakes, and he said, you know, the reason our kids are not developing as they should because we're not putting into them the same thing that mom and them put into us.
Right.
So it was different when we were growing up. I mean, even though my parents weren't really engaged, there were other people, other parents, other adults who stood in the gap, right? I mean, from a teacher or a coach. But now everybody's so busy and everybody's like me, and this is just a selfish world that we live in. And that's why all these problems have been exacerbated and not going to get solved because everybody's just looking out for themselves.
For themselves, right. Well, I think that, you know, I go back, I was talking to my brother about this the other day, when our parents went to the nighttime parent-teacher conference, they would come back and they would say, we've been told you need to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Now, we were good kids, so it wasn't like we were getting in trouble or anything like that, but, you know, you need to focus on this. Your teacher says you need to focus on that, blah, 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 blah. Now, when the parents go to the parent-teacher conference, they go, and it's a confrontation. What do you mean my kid you didn't teach him how to do this? You're not a very good teacher. It's like, instead of the parents and the teachers working together, there's such a rift that they don't work at all together. So now you come home and your parent tells the kid, your teacher's an idiot. You just keep doing what you're doing. Your teacher doesn't know what he's talking about and all that. So now the kid goes to school and isn't paying attention to what the teachers have to say. Yeah. And the teachers are fighting against both sides. And how can you get any education out of that?
Yeah, it's if they go to the PTA meeting.
If they go, right, exactly. That's the first thing, exactly.
And I was talking to a teacher, I was at the gym before the pandemic, and she was telling me a situation where she had a kid who was failing, and she's sending notices home, you know, to the parents, and no responses, and then one point the parent came up and basically cussed her out, like, how's my son failing? I said, well, I sent you 8 notices telling you what he wasn't doing. Mm-hmm. You didn't respond to none of them, and now you're gonna come up here and challenge me.
Right.
You should have challenged him when you got the first notice, right? But you didn't do anything. So what we do through this program, BOSS, is we're providing the extra help and resources and involvement and interest that maybe parents don't show in their own kids, so that these boys know that there's people who believe in them, who care about them, and who are going to be around, not just for the day or the weekend.
Right.
Yeah. In fact, I just had an interesting exchange with one of our kids. He plays baseball, right? And he was invited to this tryout for some national team or something. And so he called me to tell me because he was excited, you know, because I'm like grandpa to all these guys, right? Whatever happens, they call me. And this guy especially, he calls me to let me know what's going on. And I said, well, that's great. That's great news, right? And I asked him, was he going to share that with his friends, right? And he said, well, no, he wasn't going to share it because in case he didn't make the team, right? And I said, well, again, what we talk about, what are these principles we've been talking about? Because you know, the Sun Tzu Art of War says that the battle is over before you fight it. And what does that mean? That means you prepare, right? So if you prepare for this trial, you can say now, you can let your friends know now you're gonna go. And even if you don't make it, there's gonna be something positive come out of it. You'll learn something that you can use going forward. So again, it's all about winning and stuff, and as opposed to, again, whatever the worst case, you can use it as an opportunity to grow and to get better and learn from whatever mistakes you might make that prevented you from making it. But don't wait until it happens before you let people know you're doing it, and then don't do it only if you win, because failure is a part of success.
Right. Right. And preparing to fail pretty much ensures failure. Right. You know, but like as we said earlier, you don't win a basketball game 72-0. They're going to score. Yeah. You know, they're going to do something positive or in your case, negative against you, it's how do you respond? And that's life. You have to keep getting knocked down and you have to get back up, because it's rare that you go undefeated in everything that you do.
Yeah.
But the better off that you prepare and the better off that you work at things, there is more success and fewer failures, but there's still going to be failure.
Hey, I mean, it's just, I mean, they do experiments. I mean, and actually you learn from the failure. So if you try to do an experiment and you put this much of that and this much of that and this much of that and it don't work, now you can adjust. Maybe put a little bit less of this, a little bit more of that, and you keep eliminating stuff until you figure out how to make it work. I mean, that's just the way life is. And again, unfortunately, our kids are not getting that kind of,
Right.
people are not investing in them. And I find it amazing because we see the results. When you invest in a kid, most of the time you're going to get a positive result.
Right.
So why don't we just invest in them? And I'm talking about people in the communities that they come from. We don't need the Democrats or the Republicans to do nothing to fix our kids. We just need to invest in our kids.
And to start with, right. Well, as a former coach, I had a saying to my kids, I'm sure I'm stole it from someplace, but it's like, I can't tell you it's a bad shot if you don't take it.
Yeah.
I can't show you how to do something if you're afraid to try.
Yeah.
You have to at least make the effort. And then if you make the effort, we can adjust from there. But if you stand on the sidelines and are afraid to do what you want to do, you're never going to learn anything. You're never going to improve.
Well, we take it, we get a little bit more technical in it. Our kids know that there's 4 stages of learning, right? There's unconscious incompetence, where you don't know. And then you move to conscious competence, where you know you don't know.
Right.
And then you move to conscious competence, where you can do it, but you got to focus on it, to unconscious competence, where you have mastered something and you don't have to think about it. So that applies to everything that you do. That whatever you learn, you start out not knowing that you didn't know, and then if you work at it and you work hard at it and practice and repetition and that sort of thing, then you'll master it. And so that's how these are the kinds of principles that we put in these youngsters, and that's why they're getting the results. And so we're really excited about taking this strategy to other places around the country where our boys are having the same challenges and getting similarly a lack of investment in them, but just telling them what they should be doing and what they shouldn't be doing and criticizing them like they're not our kids.
Right.
These are our kids. But we busy trying to make money and trying to drop it like it's hot and all this other kind of stuff, and leaving the kids home to be raised by the computer, right? And so it's no surprise that everything is twisted like it is. But so we're excited about making that impact. In fact, we would have been, but for COVID, we would have been in Cleveland this summer with our program, working with the Cleveland Community Football League, and John Good and Jason. His son Najee Good plays for the Jaguars, the linebacker, who's an engineer, he's got his own software company, right? So he's a boss kind of guy. So we're gonna bring boss to Cleveland, but we're gonna take it to every NBA, NFL, Major League Baseball city, and those in between that have populations of kids that who need the kind of extra help we can provide. Because we don't. I mean, our focus on Black kids, we got white kids and Hispanic kids and Asian kids and Pacific Islanders. It don't make no difference to us as long as you're committed to invest in yourself.
Right. Well, I wish we could do this for about another 3 or 4 hours, because you opened my eyes to a few things, for one thing, but also understanding that there are ways to go about things that unfortunately we're not doing, and things that we should be doing better. And that sometimes we blame the kids, sometimes we blame the environment, sometimes we blame society, and some of that blame should fall back on the people that came before that aren't helping out the way that you are. So that's something I think that might be worth another discussion.
Well, yeah, and I could talk about it further too, and there are a lot of things going on. I'm not suggesting that people aren't active, but the problem hasn't gotten better. So I just look at it from the position of if 75% of our kids are still failing, then not enough people are doing
Right.
using their experience and their know-how and to help these kids do the same thing that they did before. So no, this is good. You can check us out. I don't know if you've been to the website, www.bossprograms.org, and we got a hackathon team. Now we're gonna start a robotics team. Uh, we smoothly switched to online when the pandemic hit, and we stayed engaged with these guys, and um, we're excited, man. We're excited, and so we'll be coming to Ohio soon, for sure. I hope this thing passes, by springtime next year, but at least we can feel comfortable traveling.
Well, I'd love to be able to touch base with you again a little bit later and see how things are progressing, and maybe we can throw a little of our weight your way to help out in some of those cities you're talking about. We're planning on having a station in each city,
Yeah,
the professional city, so we can kind of combine forces that way. So I
sounds like a
appreciate you
plan.
taking
Let's
the
stay in
time.
touch. I
All
appreciate
right.
your time for
Okay.
sure. Take care.
All right. Thank you very much.
Uh-huh.